Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary, back with episode number 6 of Just Jets. What's going on? Really excited to get into it here. Got a lot to cover. This is going to be a free agency reaction episode. We'll get to questions at the end, but this is going to be real free agency heavy. And can you blame me? Because it was a really exciting time, not only for the Jets, but for the NFL. And it started out pretty slow for the Jets, but as things started to progress, Joe Douglas started to do more and more moves, but I think I wanted to start episode number 6. And again, I appreciate you listening wherever you are listening. Please make sure to subscribe, whether it's on the YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment if you're on YouTube. It really helps me out, and I appreciate it a ton. So, the big news of free agency. Tom Brady is no longer a New England Patriot, and that has a huge impact on the New York Jets because they are in the AFC East, and the AFC East has been dominated by the New England Patriots for, well, as long as I've been watching football. I can admit, I am 24 years old, going to be 25 in about a month. Crazy. Nonetheless, I've been watching football regularly since 2003. Right? That's like when I could remember what was going on, know what's going on, around 8 years old. And for as long as I can remember, it's been Tom Brady and the New England Patriots dominating that division. One time since I've been watching, they didn't win the division. That was in 2008 when the Miami Dolphins won the division. And they missed the playoffs, the New England Patriots did, at 11-5 with Matt Castle at quarterback. So, to be fair, yes, it's been mostly Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots dominating the AFC East. But no more. I say to that, no more. As Tom Brady leaves, he is going to Tampa Bay, which I'm really surprised by this. I did not expect him to be leaving New England. I just couldn't believe it. I guess part of it is because I've witnessed them murder the Jets and the AFC East, and the AFC in general, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. At least that's what it feels like. And I just couldn't really believe that the New England Patriots would be playing football without Tom Brady at quarterback. And I know eventually, that's going to have to happen, and they're going to have to move on from him. I mean, he is going to be 43 years old, but I just couldn't picture it. I don't know. That was my biggest thing, is why I wasn't buying it, was I can't picture Tom Brady in a uniform that's not the New England Patriots. I know he goes to Tampa Bay. There's been the photoshops in the Tampa Bay jerseys. He seems all into it. I don't think they're really in win now mode. I still think the Saints are miles better than them. Obviously, I think they're going to be better than the Panthers, who are in a rebuild. The Falcons are just a team that's going to go 7-9 every year, no matter what, even no matter how much talent they have on the offensive side of the football. They are going to go 7-9 this year. So maybe they finish second with 7 teams in the playoffs now. Maybe they can fight for a wild card spot. But Tom Brady leaves New England to fight for a wild card spot? I don't know, man. That just seems really strange. I think that's really their ceiling. They're going to be about maybe a 9-win team, Tampa Bay, this year, as currently constructed, fighting for that 7 seed, maybe the 6 seed. I don't think they win the division unless something crazy happens, but Bruce Arians gets their guy. I mean, Tampa Bay is going to be loaded. It's going to be must-watch television. Their season ticket waiting list has gone through the roof, and ultimately right now, the question becomes, well, who's the next team? And everyone wants to say the Jets, and I would normally say I agree with a lot of, the reason behind why the Jets could be the next team. I think they have the best quarterback in the division. That's going to be another, video at another point here. I don't want to get too much into detail and give it away here, but they don't have the best roster. Right now, I would put Buffalo's roster ahead of them, and Miami's doing a lot of big things. And we'll start with Buffalo. I like that team a lot outside of the quarterback position, and I don't want it to be like, oh my God, here we go. Matt is just completely biased against the Buffalo Bills. Not true. Not true at all. I did not like Josh Allen from day one. I did not want the Jets to draft Josh Allen, and I think he plays a really flawed game. I think ultimately could be holding that team back. You can prove me all wrong. Maybe in year 3, he maybe has a big year. They trade for Stephon Diggs. They have a much improved roster overall from top to bottom. I get all that. But what I saw in the playoffs and what I saw over his first 2 years is a quarterback who tends to run first, doesn't always make the smartest decisions. And I know you flip it around and say, well, Sam Darnold has thrown his fair share of interceptions. True, but if you are looking at just skill set level, I don't think it's really that comparable. I think Darnold is the much more skilled quarterback who has had a much weaker supporting cast, a much weaker offensive coordinator and head coach. And I think there's been, a lot holding Darnold back. But as of right now, Buffalo is the better team. And I would pick Buffalo to win the division. If I had to make a choice right now, as of today, as every team in the division is constructed, forget the draft, forget everything else, Buffalo would probably win the division at 10 or 11 wins. Then I think New England's right there after that at maybe 7 or 8 wins. Even if Jared Stidham's their quarterback or Brian Hoyer's their quarterback, I think Bill Belichick is good enough to get them to about 7 or 8 wins. Miami's going to be right there at around 7 wins, and the Jets are going to probably be around there at 6 or 7 wins as currently constructed. Again, that could all change. I don't have a ton of faith in the head coach, which we're going to get into later in the voicemails, but I think that is a huge reason why I can't sit here and say, well, Tom Brady leaves, AFC East is now the Jets' division. I'm not buying into that, at least not in 2020. Maybe in 2021 if you have Eric Bieniemy as your head coach and Sam Darnold taking a big step forward. But as of right now, no, I can't. And I do have faith in Joe Douglas, who we're going to get into in a second here, but I have no faith in the head coach. I really don't. And to me, that's the biggest reason why I don't trust the New York Jets in 2020 to take over the division. If I had to pick one team, as of right this second, it's Buffalo. But if you swap that out, if you have a reasonable head coach, maybe I can get behind it. But for now, I can't. Tom Brady's gone. It still doesn't feel real. It doesn't. But there's still work to be done. And the biggest work is potentially at the head coaching position. So now what I wanted to do is just run through some of the Jets signings and stuff like that. Talk about them, if I liked them, if I didn't like it. And we'll start with George Fant, who was really the big first signing. And I know I was, and a lot of people were probably like, well, who is this? Why didn't you sign Conklin? Once Thuney was off the market, that really hurt the Jets is when Joe Thuney was franchise tagged the morning of free agency tampering period beginning, so on Monday. So they flip. They don't get Conklin. They don't want to pay up. George Fant gets 3 years, $30 million, just 13.7 guaranteed. It's essentially a glorified 1-year deal. I don't love the deal. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's a phenomenal deal, but I don't think it's as bad as what people are making it out to be. Ultimately here, he's probably going to start. Whether it's on the left side or the right side is yet to be seen, but I would assume is you're going to draft someone at 11 overall, plug them in on the left side. Fant's going to compete with Chuma Edoga, and he's going to beat out Chuma Edoga to start on the right side. But ultimately here, he's a little bit of a risk. He's someone who got benched in Seattle last year, and we know Seattle doesn't have the best offensive line unit. He's a really raw and athletic piece at 27 years old. He's not someone who's completely polished yet, which is a little bit scary at his age. But there is a high-ish ceiling and a low floor as well. It's a risky signing. But the good thing is it's only a glorified 1-year deal. You can get out of it for little dead money after this year. I'm okay with it as a starter on the right side if you bring in an offensive tackle at 11, which I still fully expect to happen. More on that later. But George Fant as the first signing wasn't flashy, but I don't hate it when you get the context of what else was done. Which brings me to my next guy. Connor McGovern got a 3-year deal at $27 million. It was a lot cheaper than I thought you were going to get McGovern for. He was the best center on the market. He could play center. He could play guard. He's like the 11th rated center, I believe, by Pro Football Focus. He's in the prime of his career. I like this move a lot. It had to be done because the New York Jets have struggled at the center position for a really, really, really long time. So Nick Mangold retires after the 2016 season, and they give Wesley Johnson the position, and he really doesn't do a whole lot in 2017. So in 2018, they say, hey, let's go out and sign Spencer Long. Okay, except for he was absolutely awful. They moved him to guard where he was slightly better, but Jonathan Harrison comes in relief at center, and we know Jonathan Harrison is like a bottom 3 starting center in the league. So then in comes Joe Douglas after they fire Mike McCagnon for last year. He takes a swing and signs Ryan Khalil. Now, hand up, I was a fan of the signing. I thought, okay, not a bad stopgap. He's coming out of retirement, but the fact that the Jets were able to get a premier center out of retirement and sign to their team, interesting. I was intrigued by it. Well, he stunk. He was really bad. He ends up getting hurt. Jonathan Harrison comes in and is, again, like a bottom 3 to 5 center in the league as a starter, which you could use an upgrade. McGovern's going to be top 15. 15 at the lowest. He has potential to be a top 10 center in this league. I like him a lot. I think the signing makes sense for the Jets, and that made me feel a lot better about the George Fant deal. So, Connor McGovern, 3 years, $27 million. Big fan of that deal. They also bring back Neville Hewitt on a 1-year deal for $2 million. Neville Hewitt filled in for Avery Williamson at inside linebacker and was, I thought, pretty solid last year. One of the things that I tend to believe is I don't think you need Avery Williamson on this roster in 2020. I personally would cut him because it frees up, I believe, $6.5 million of cap space. So instead of paying big money to Avery Williamson and CJ Mosley at a position that isn't really all that high up on the positional value chart, I would get by with a Neville Hewitt and Blake Cashman rotating potentially, and instead use that money to fill in at edge or wide receiver or a position that holds a little bit more value. I think that would make a little bit more sense. I think you'd get by with that. I mean, you didn't have Avery Williamson all of last year. You didn't have CJ Mosley really for much of last year. And you still were the 11th overall defense in terms of DVOA. So I would be okay with Neville Hewitt and CJ Mosley in the middle. I think it's going to be rare that you're going to have 4 linebackers on the field anyway. So I think it's mostly going to be CJ Mosley. Anyway, 1 year, $2 million, it's chump change. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. So I thought it was okay to bring him back. Next guy I want to talk about is Pierre Desser, who is a 1 year, $5.5 million deal corner from the Colts. He was cut surprisingly. Had a really, really good 2018 year. Took a little bit of a step back in 2019. Was about an average to replacement level starting outside corner. They really needed a ton of help at corner. They don't have a big name. They obviously cut Jermaine Johnson. They also cut Darryl Roberts. So he had a hole at the position. I understand Blesson Austin came on strong at the end. I mean, Arthur Mollett was re-signed. That's another guy on my list. But I don't think you can go into 2020 with Mollett and Blesson Austin as your starting outside corners. Instead, you bring in Desser, who I think is pretty solid. Like, you're hoping he's 2018 version, but even if he's 2019, it's only a 1 year deal. You can get out of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they attack that position in the draft as well. So you bring him in. He's going to start on one side, Bless on the other. You have Brian Poole, who I also have on this list, who was signed to a 1 year deal at $5 million, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it was 5 or $5.5 million for him as well. I think it was 5. Anyway, you have him in the slot, then Mollett's the 4th corner, and then you have Nate Hairston as your 5th corner. Then you have a little bit of depth at the position, which realistically the Jets had no depth at that position last year, and that's why Blesson Austin and Arthur Mollett were starting. And they did a fine job, and hats off to Greg Williams for getting a ton out of those two guys, but you have to improve at that position. Then you bring in Greg Van Roten, 3-year deal. He was from Carolina. He is a starting caliber guard, 30 years old, grew up a Jets fan, which I think is really cool. This is a deal you can get out of after year 1 if you have to. He's on the older side at 30, but still productive. He is definitely an upgrade over Brian Winters. I think this allows you to cut Brian Winters because Alex Lewis was re-signed as well to a 3-year deal for $18.6 million. So ultimately here, I think, and I might as well mention it now, Josh Andrews, who is going to be a depth backup piece that he signed from, I believe he was with the Colts last year, spent some time with the Eagles. That's where Joe Douglas knows him from. So as of this second, the starting offensive line looks like this. Fant at left tackle, Alex Lewis at left guard, McGovern's going to play center, right guard Van Roten, and then right tackle is probably Chuma Doga right now, or Josh Andrews. But when you draft someone at 11, makes it look a little bit more intriguing. You have the 11th overall pick on the left side, Lewis at left guard, McGovern at center, Van Roten at right guard, and then Fant at right tackle. That is a lot better. In one offseason, flipping from what you had last year to that is a step up. That could be an average offensive line. somewhere around the middle of the pack, I would say. Going down the list here, you brought in Marquis Christian, who is a depth safety. He did not really start all that much when he was with the Rams, kind of a special teams player. Was okay, but I think, you need some depth behind Jamal Adams and Marcus May. May was healthy for all of last year, but he's shown that he can get a little bit injury prone. Jamal Adams missed a little bit of time, so it's important to have some depth. It costs you like $1.5 million to do this. It's a fine signing. I don't think it's anything crazy. I don't expect him to play a ton, but I think it's a fine move. And ultimately here, that's all you've really got for free agency so far. There's still some moves left that could be and should be made. Robbie Anderson, who's number 11 I'm rocking right now, I really want the Jets to bring him back. His market has not developed at all. He is still the best receiver on the market right now. After very early on in free agency, we know that the big name guy was taken off the board in Amari Cooper. He re-signs for $20 million a year. I would not give Amari Cooper $20 million a year, but Robbie became the number one target after that, and no one's really talking to him. There's not a whole lot going on, so I fully expect him to come back to the Jets. I just think they have to decide on a price. He wants about 13, 14 million. The Jets want to give him maybe 10, 11 million. Split the difference, go 12. I'm fully comfortable with going 4 years, $12 million a year for $48 million. I would do it in a heartbeat. I think Robbie Anderson, said it a million times on this show, is a unique deep threat. He's still pretty young at 26, 27 years old. He is someone who stays healthy. A lot of deep threats do not. You look at Will Fuller, you look at Deshaun Jackson, they can't stay on the field. And Robbie's route tree is better than just your average deep threat. Is he used properly? No, I'll fully admit that. I don't think he's been used properly over the last 2 years. I think John Morton got the best out of him in 2017 with Josh McCown at quarterback. But also when you look at his numbers, they're a little bit lower because his starting quarterback's gotten hurt each of the last 3 years or sick. So Darnold missed 3 games this year. He missed 3 games last year. And Josh McCown missed 3 games in 2017. If McCown doesn't get hurt in 2017, Robbie goes over 1,000 yards. That's a given. He had like 950 yards, and Bryce Petty played the last 3 games. Then he had in the 700s or hovered right around 800 yards the last 2 years. And I think that number's at least over 900, maybe even closer to 1,000 if Darnold is healthy for those 3 games each of the last 2 years. I really like Anderson. I want him to be brought back. I think you can get him, like I said, at $12 million a year. And I would still draft a receiver in the second round, but ultimately that wide receiver is still a hole. And bringing Anderson back would be not enough, but a good start to filling that hole up. And then, you filled out offensive line, did a really nice job. No big name, but he didn't really go crazy in spending. Added a ton of depth. Added a starting outside corner. Still need help at edge, though. There's 3 guys left that I'm interested in, and no, Jadeveon Clowney's not one of them. I would not pay Jadeveon Clowney big money. Some people don't like that on the YouTube channel in the comments. Whenever I say that, they think that I am biased against him. Well, a couple of reasons why I think he's overrated. He's a number 1 overall pick, so he's a big name. Yes, he can make some big plays, but his sack numbers are down. And part of the reason for that is because he gets double teamed, and I understand that. He's a talented player, but he does take plays off. He never has been a double-digit sack guy in his career. He's a penalty machine. He's a walking penalty. I think he's talented, but I think you can get better value. Instead of paying him $20 million a year, I think you could sign a veteran for a shorter-term deal, cheaper money, and get nice production in a role player scenario. So like Everson Griffin, yeah, he's older. He's, I think, 32. But he's still productive. He had 8 sacks last year. And he could be someone as a situational pass rusher that could get you 8 to 10 sacks. Yeah, he doesn't have to play every down, but I think that's fine. I really like Griffin. Or Vinny Curry from the Eagles. He's someone who's a situational pass rusher that could really get to the quarterback. It's someone I would take a flyer on. And even Clay Matthews, who's just cut. I understand he's a much older, but I'm not saying you got to be on the field for 90% of the snaps. Maybe half the snaps, if that. Third down, say, hey, go get the quarterback, and that's it. And then you have a guy like Basham play on the other side. There's no reason to pay Jordan Jenkins $13 million to do what he does, setting the edge. Yes, I like Jordan Jenkins, but I didn't realize his market was going to be that high. So at the end of the day here, I'm looking to bring in an edge piece who can get after the quarterback and make life a little bit easier for Greg Williams on the defensive side of the ball. All right, I want to get into the voicemails now. We're going to start with Anthony from Ronkonkoma, Long Island product, and he wants to talk a little bit about Adam Gase. So let's hear from Anthony.
Hey, Matt. My name's Anthony. I'm from Ronkonkoma. I just wanted to say and also ask you, do you have faith in Adam Gase? Because I do not. All of my friends, diehard Jets fans, do not. We all think he's ruining Sam Darnold. And that's super aggravating to watch every week. So far, it's only been 1 year. But what do you think he's going to do with Sam? Hopefully improve him. I don't have that much faith. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I really don't have that much faith either. Thank you for the question, Anthony. I did not like the hire at all last year. You can go back and watch the videos. He was probably my least favorite candidate. I'm not sitting here and saying like, oh, the Jets should do 100% what I think or anything like that. Listen, I'm just a fan with an opinion here. I don't think I'm, better than anybody else, but Adam Gase has not shown success pretty much outside of Peyton Manning. He parlayed Peyton Manning being good into a 2015 offensive coordinator gig with the Chicago Bears where Jay Cutler was okay. Then he parlayed that into a head coaching job with the Miami Dolphins. Didn't do anything there really outside of a 10-6 year, surprisingly, where he went into the playoffs and got bounced rather quickly from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Parlays that into a Jets job. They're atrocious, one of the worst offenses in the league, and somehow is getting a year two. They finished strong at the end of the year, went like 6-2 down the stretch, but that's really more on Greg Williams and how good that defense was. I don't trust Adam Gase. I'm hoping that this is his last year as a head coach, but at the same time, I don't want to root for my team to lose any more games. I'm tired of this team losing. I would like him to prove me wrong. They'd go out there, win 10 games, 11 games this year, maybe compete to win the division. That would be awesome. I just don't see it. I don't think he's a good offensive coach. I don't. And I don't think Dowell Loggins is a good offensive coordinator. I have faith in Joe Douglas. I have faith in Greg Williams. Don't have faith in the offense. So I'm nervous. I'm right there with you, Anthony. I don't like Adam Gase, and I really wanted Matt Rule. And it sucks that Matt Rule went to Carolina because I think he's going to do a good job turning that team around. I joked about it earlier, but I would be all over Eric Bieniemy after this year. I think, he's learned under Andy Reid and has done a really nice job with them. So Eric Bieniemy is my early candidate for 2021. Next up is Jaden from New Jersey, who wants to talk a little bit about Jack Conklin. Now, some of these questions are going to be a little bit dated because, they happen throughout the week, but we'll just talk about it and you'll see.
Hey, Matt, this is Jaden calling from New Jersey. Did you hear about the Browns signing Jack Conklin, and what do you think the Jets can do now for their offensive line now that he's gone?
So, obviously, we've heard about this by now. At this point, again, I appreciate it, Jaden, for the question. So, I'm just going to kind of answer it with what he did do and why they didn't go after Conklin. I don't think he wanted to spend big money on Conklin. Do I agree with that? Maybe not, but I think he took I'm trying to think of how to explain this. He didn't necessarily go the cheap route, but he went maybe bargain bin shopping instead of going out and throwing big money at a free agent, which I think is intriguing because Mike McCagnon would do that and he would get the Jets into trouble where they would try to do the quick fix like in 2015, didn't work. He tried to do it after 2017, didn't work. Tried to do it last year, didn't work. So he's building it a little bit slower. Maybe he's not spending money on the big name guys, but I still think that Joe Douglas did an adequate job of adding depth, and I think he's going to continue to do that in the NFL draft. So I can't really give you a full answer here because we don't know what this team's going to look like until after the draft. So I'm kind of waiting, but so far I think he's done a decent job. I don't think it's been phenomenal. I don't think it's been bad, but I think he's done a pretty good job of adding depth on this roster. Next up is our friend John from Miami, who wants to talk a little bit of Adam Gase and a college coach that he likes a lot.
Hey, Matt, this is John calling from Miami. You've taken my calls multiple times, and I really, really appreciate it. There's not a lot of fans here in Miami. I get a lot of crap for it here with all these Dolphin fans and all the moves they're making. But I have a question for you. Let's say Joe Douglas gives everything in their mother to Adam Gase on what he wants on his offense, the right linemen, wide receivers, running backs, whatever. He gives them all the tools to succeed. Will this finally showcase that with all the stuff that he needs to run an offense, clearly shows that Adam Gase's offense sucks. He's not a good coach, and possibly cut ties with him after this season coming up, and possibly get the guy that I want, and I believe you mentioned him too, Lincoln Riley. Because, dude, I like his offense. He's a young, up-and-coming coach, and we need some new life in offense. So do you think it will show his deficiencies, Adam Gase, like, oh, crap, I have everybody. There's no excuses. I can't say this player didn't do that. So give me your thoughts on that. Thanks. Bye.
I think that's a really great point. Thank you so much, John. And I'm glad you brought that up. So let's start with Gase and then get to Lincoln Riley. With Gase, I think excuses are off the board. Joe Douglas is supposedly friends with Adam Gase, and I don't think that's going to give Gase any advantage. Like, if he well underperforms this year, I don't think he's going to be like, well, he's my buddy. He's sticking around. There's no excuses for Adam Gase anymore. It's his second year. It's going to be his, fifth year coaching in the AFC East in a row. It's crazy. It's got to be now or never for Adam Gase. And if there's another year of improvement from Sam Darnold, you got an offensive line. There's no excuses anymore. If this isn't an offense that is at least middle of the pack, there's issues here. And I'm not saying the Jets roster is perfect. It's not. But if you're an offensive guru, you should be able to get a lot out of a 22-year-old quarterback with the talent that Sam Darnold has, with Robbie Anderson, Le'Veon Bell, Jamison Crowder in the slot, two really good receiving tight ends in Chris Herndon, who will be healthy this year, and Ryan Griffin. It's frustrating. It's extremely frustrating, and I would move if Adam Gase struggles this year and the offense stinks again. He's got to go. And as much as I would love Lincoln Riley, I just don't think he's coming here. And I think the Jets tried to interview him last year, and he didn't want to do it. I don't think he would. As much as I love that idea, John, I just don't buy that happening. I'm not opposed to going the college route. I really liked Cliff Kingsbury last go around. I really liked Matt Rule last go around. I would have been all over Matt Campbell potentially, but I don't know who the hot guy coming out of college is outside of Lincoln Riley. Joe Brady was probably going to be one of those guys, but he links up with Matt Rule in Carolina, which I think is going to be really, really fun to watch over the next few years. Like I said, as much as I would love Lincoln Riley, I don't necessarily think that's realistic, unfortunately, for the New York Jets. Next up is Nicholas from Georgia, and he wants to talk a little bit about Todd Gurley. Let's hear what he had to say.
Hey, Matt O'Leary, this is Nicholas George down here in Augusta, Georgia. Originally from New Jersey, though, so big old Jets fan. Love your content, man. Keep up the great work. My question for you is, I just looked now, so it's kind of a stupid question, but Todd Gurley was released from L.A. Would you have liked for the Jets to pick him up and kind of have that 1-2 combo of Lev Bell and Todd Gurley? I, for one thing, it could have been a good, decent combo, but I would still love to hear your input. Yeah, man. Jets, Jets, baby, what it do?
Love the energy and love the question. Unfortunately for Todd Gurley, and I know he ended up signing with the Atlanta Falcons, I think he's almost done, which is scary because he's only 25 years old. It feels like he's been in the league for a while now, but he's only 25 years old, but he has the knees of a 32-year-old running back. His knees are still not great. We found that out after he signed that his knees aren't great, and as much as I think the talent is there, yes, I just don't know if the health is. And I would have preferred the Jets to go a cheaper route, so I'm kind of glad they didn't sign him. I don't blame you for that because, again, I'll admit, I think the talent is there. I just don't think Adam Gase really wants to go that route anyway. I don't think him or Joe Douglas really want to spend big money on running back, which is kind of ironic because they have Le'Veon Bell. But I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back like a Bilal Powell. I would like them to, actually. Maybe they go even a cheaper route. Maybe they go mid-round pick in the draft. There's a few ways you can go, but I really think, and it's unfortunate, but I think that Todd Gurley's just about done in the NFL. I don't think he has the legs under him anymore, so I'm not surprised they didn't go that direction, and I'm kind of happy about it. I know he's a big-name guy, but I just don't think it would have been a fit, especially for that kind of money. Next, we're going to go from JJ, who's calling from Alberta, Canada. Let's hear from JJ.
Hello, Matt. How you doing? JJ from Alberta, Canada. When are the Jets going to get their shit together? Seems like there's always someone going against what the plan is. They know who they're drafting, or do they know who they're drafting? There's always 3-4 guys every year get involved with trouble, drugs, whatever, and they have problems in the past, and they're signing these guys. I don't know what to say here. They get good draft picks, they have money, and they make stupid fucking. Anyways, love your show, man. Right on.
I get the frustration. I really do, JJ. I mean, I get it. I think they are close, which is kind of ironic because I bash the coach a lot, but like I've said on this show, I'll say it again. I do trust Joe Douglas, and I think he's done a pretty good job so far. I would like him to bring back Robbie Anderson. I would like him to add an edge and then see what he does in the draft. That's really where Joe Douglas should be. That's his bread and butter is the draft. He loves that stuff. So I would really have a better answer for you after the 2020 NFL draft. I think that there is some talent here and there is some nice building pieces, but there is still work to be done. I think you get a new head coach in here after this upcoming year, then I'm feeling a little bit more confident of this thing turning around. But I get the frustration. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010. They went the entire tens that decade missing the playoffs, except for the first year, obviously. But listen, JJ, I really get the frustration. I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they don't deserve to be criticized. I mean, I think I do a pretty fair job of criticizing them when they need to, praising them when they need to, but it's frustrating. Next up is Rob in Seattle, and thank you for the question, JJ. And I don't know if I got Nicholas, but thank you for the question, Nicholas, who wants to talk about Chris Herndon. So let's hear from Rob and Chris Herndon.
Hey, this is Rob Wilson from Seattle, Washington. Curious why no one's talking about Chris Herndon and how much impact he might have when he comes back healthy in 2020. So interested. I know we got a lot of moving parts in the receiving core right now. I'm not sure who's going to be lined up outside, but with Herndon coming in, I'm assuming that's a big upgrade from Ryan Griffin, but curious about how much that's going to help Sam in year 3. So have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I love the question, and I really like Chris Herndon's game. As a rookie, he put up some really good numbers. He did. He was one of the better fantasy receiving tight ends, and he was really comfortable with Sam Darnold, which I'm excited to see that in year 3. And Ryan Griffin was a lot better than I thought he would be. He put up some big numbers, and he was really comfortable with Sam. So I would love to see Adam Gase get creative and do some 2 tight end sets. I really would. Get them the ball. And for a young quarterback, I mean, we saw it with Mark Sanchez and Dustin Keller. The tight end could really be your best friend. It can. And maybe this isn't going to be like Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez in their heyday with the New England Patriots in the early 2010s. But I think you can get by with 2 pretty solid tight ends and have an interesting looking offense. And you could do some creative things. And that's part of the frustrating part with Adam Gase is that there are pieces where you can get creative and he just doesn't do it. The 2 tight ends this year would be a great example. Last year with the running backs, he had Le'Veon Bell, Bilal Powell, and Ty Montgomery. Those 3 guys are great pass catchers. How many times did he use multi-back sets? Very rarely, if any. And that was one of the frustrating things. Line up Le'Veon Bell in the slot. Let him do work in the slot. And have Montgomery and Powell in the backfield. Have 3 running backs on the field. You can do so many different things. And with the 2 tight ends, have them both on the field. And get creative. Use guys as decoys and stuff like that. But it really all depends on what Adam Gase is looking to do with this offense. I'm tired of the excuses for Adam Gase. I really am. But I'm a big fan of Chris Herndon's game, and I think he's going to make life a lot easier for Sam Darnold. So thank you, Rob, for the question. Next up, we're going to go to Travis from Ohio, and he wants to talk about the free agency. So let's hear from him.
Hey, Matt. It's Travis from Ohio. Love the show, of course. We didn't get Conklin. Hopefully we get our boy Anderson. And we can see a cartwheel still. Love what Douglas is doing with the offensive line because we were in the top 5 in salary cap allocated towards offensive line, and they totally sucked before. So underpaying guys that don't have penalties against them over the years and are under 30 or at 30 with Van Rotten is awesome to me. So anyway, your thoughts let you go. Love you, brother. Stay healthy, please. Bye.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to everyone, listening and tuning in, really, these are tough times, and I know what I do in the grand scheme of things isn't really all that important. I'm just talking about the Jets on the internet. That's what I do. I love it. I think it's so much fun, but there's so many more important things out there. So thank you to the first responders and to the nurses and doctors right now, because they have an extremely tough job. It's a thankless job, and the teachers too. It's tough what they're doing, man, on the online classes and stuff like that. So I tip my cap to them. But I hope you guys are staying healthy. Please wash your hands. Stay inside as much as you can. Social distancing. I know it sucks, but it's gonna help. So I hope everyone gets through this. Thank you so much, Travis, for the love and support too. By the way, really appreciate each and every one of you guys. But to get to his question on free agency, or really, I guess what I want to talk about from his question or comment from free agency, I do like what Joe Douglas has been doing so far. Again, I think he's done a pretty decent job. I don't think it's been perfect. I don't think he's been bad though. I think he's done a pretty good job so far. And the guys that he's brought in, this is a great point. They don't have a ton of penalties. I mean, McGovern I think he had one penalty last year. Van Roten has like 4 penalties in the last 3 years. Fant doesn't have a ton of starting experience, so that's not necessarily one, but I like that they're bringing in guys who aren't penalty machines. Brian Winters, who's potentially going to get replaced, was a walking penalty. And Alex Lewis sometimes gets into penalty trouble, but at the end of the day here, if they can cut down on penalties, which is something that Gase brought up a lot, then again, that's just another excuse out the door. But I agree with Travis I think that it's smart to go with depth guys and not necessarily paying or throwing a ton of money at the top end free agents and building depth, because the Jets haven't had depth in a long time, and they really, really, really lacked offensive line depth for a really long time, which is why you missed the playoffs for a decade, because it's been ignored, and he's overcompensating for that, Douglas is, and I think that's smart. But I do like, it's a great point from Travis, that these guys have no or very few penalties, which is phenomenal. Last question is Ethan from New York. It's a little bit on the longer side, but he wants to talk about drafting a wide receiver. So let's hear from Ethan.
What's up, Matt? It's Ethan calling from New York. I'm just wondering about like these moves, like signing McGovern and now the guy from the Panthers. Do you think this opens up the possibility? Because I feel like before all these signings, it was a foregone conclusion the Jets would most likely be drafting an offensive lineman. But now with all these signings, is there a chance we could draft a CD Lamb or Jerry Jeudy? Because we still have a lot of money left. And Robbie doesn't have a market. We could end up with Robbie and CD Lamb, because I don't think Robbie's a number one receiver anyway. But a receiver like CD Lamb just by himself or Jerry Jeudy would be amazing. So what do you think about the options for us drafting now that all the offensive linemen have gone? Thank you. Keep up with the work.
Really appreciate the question, and this is going to be really tough for me because I love Jerry Jeudy's game. I love CD Lamb's game, but I don't think they're taking a wide receiver in the first round. I just can't picture Joe Douglas taking a receiver in round 1. I don't. And everything that I've heard, and listen, I'm not claiming to have like inside sources in the building or anything like that, but just from people that I have talked to and from my understanding of what Joe Douglas likes to do, I would be very, very surprised if he went wide receiver in round 1. Very, very surprised. I think their plan is to still take the best tackle available, and I've hinted at that throughout most of this show, just because I don't think their offensive line is fully complete. And I think you need to overcompensate, because offensive line outside of the quarterback position is the most important thing in an offense. So you have the quarterback in Sam Darnold, and I truly believe that Sam's your guy. I don't want to get into the nonsense that he's a bust or that anything like that, but you still need that long-term piece, because all these other guys are mostly stopgaps or short-term deals so that you can get out of 1 year if they stink too, by the way, which is a good thing. But you need to get that DeBrickashaw Ferguson, that guy who could stick with your quarterback for the next decade. That's exactly what you need. And I would still take a wide receiver in round 2. I think there are going to be good receivers on the board in round 2. But here's my logic for why you take an offensive lineman. So there's 5 offensive linemen in this draft, the big 4, and then I think there's a gap. And then Josh Jones. I always want to say Josh Jacobs, but it's Josh Jones, who is from Houston. He was an offensive tackle who I think is going to go in the mid-round, just about, depending on where the other 4 tackles go. But I'd feel comfortable with taking one of those guys because I think there's a dramatic drop-off to the next group, which is like Austin Jackson, guys like that, where at the wide receiver position, there's like 10 guys with like legit starter potential that you can get someone in round 2 who could come in and produce right away. So I would rather wait and see who is there at 48, where the Jets pick in the second round for wide receiver, and just take the best offensive tackle available at 11. I don't know if I'd move up. I don't know if I'd move back. I might just sit there and wait and see what happens. We don't know how the draft is going to break. Guys fall every year. I'd be surprised if Jedrick Wills or Tristan Wirfs is there, but Mekhi Becton, Andrew Thomas, I'd be completely fine with that being the pick at 11th overall. And then some guys at 48, maybe T. Higgins. Mims is a guy who might be there. I'd love for Justin Jefferson to be there. I think he's going to go in round 1. Maybe Laviska Shenault drops. Jalen Reagor's more of a slot guy, so I wouldn't take him. There's guys who are going to be available, and pretty good receivers and big name receivers there in round 2. So I think that would be my plan, is ultimately take offensive line in round 1, receiver in round 2, and then in round 3, maybe that's where you go edge and corner, and then go back to the offensive line later, or running back or stuff like that. Maybe double down on a receiver. But ultimately here, I think it's a good question, and I don't hate the idea of going wide receiver, especially with one of those 2 guys in Lamb or Judy. I just would be very surprised if it happened. From all indications that I've seen, it's going to be an offensive lineman, but that's just me. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Make sure, again, to subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. It really helps me out. I genuinely appreciate it. I hope you guys stay safe. I hope you stay healthy. Again, I just wanted this to be a reaction to free agency. Still more to be done. We'll be back next week. Maybe get an interview on. I kind of wanted to wait to see we have a complete view of free agency because, there's big name guys out there. Robbie's still out there. Jadeveon Clowney's still out there. So I don't think it's fair to completely get an opinion on somebody. And I didn't want to do an interview earlier in the week and then play it and it become outdated. So I kind of just wanted to wait till Monday morning, which is why the episode's coming out a little bit later than I usually would like to get it up. But to make sure that I covered everything and there were no new fresh signings. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Get at me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'll talk to you next time.